And it's how fast America has innovated and changed. And we just talked about that with farming. We talked about that with, I met an auctioneer. Again, auctioneering itself is not American, but the chant. 5 now 10, 10 now 15, 20, 25, 30. And I grew up at a lot of farm sales, and I was enamored with the chant. Where does that come from? How do you learn that? How do you talk so darn fast? And my uncle was an auctioneer, and he put me in touch with a friend of his who was also an auctioneer. And he started talking about that this is how they started trading tobacco and things and selling in the South. And it's to move the story along and to keep you interested, and they don't want any gaps. So you find it fascinating and you keep bidding. So he keeps talking. And he had talked about how his business now is not in front at an auction house.
Americans are capable of achieving extraordinary things when they have the freedom and opportunity to do so. This is American Potential.
Hey everyone, welcome to the American Potential Podcast. I'm your host, David Fromm. One of the cool things as the World Cup has progressed here in North America, it's been seeing folks kind of discover America, whether it be like ranch dressing or barbecue or just like how beautiful parts of America are. It's just been cool to see it through their eyes. Engineer Matt, have you seen some of those videos?
I have, but there's one that really stood out to me. He was a Japanese guy who got interviewed by a local Fox TV affiliate. And he had the most enthusiastic interview I've ever seen. It was hilarious. He's like, I don't speak English, but I am happy. I'm excited. And you'll have to see his interview. Viewers right now may have seen it. His interview went totally viral all across the internet, and he got a great nickname out of it. Now, don't ask me where the nickname comes from, but he is now called Hero Chicken Nugget Cookie. That's his name online now.
That's pretty funny.
So if you're curious, look up Hero Chicken Nugget Cookie's interview with Fox 4, and it is an incredible interview. It just goes to show the excitement around this transcends national boundaries in many cases. He's not an American, but he is just excited to be there. He's excited for Team America. Of course, he was excited for Team Japan too, but the enthusiasm there was so cool. That's what comes to mind for me.
Sometimes, we can get caught up, especially those of us in like public policy and politics, you get caught up in like us versus them. And, some people are dumping on America and all. Maybe it's just a nice refresher to have folks come through the country and be like, wow, this place is awesome. Because, I've been so blessed to travel all around this nation. I've been to almost every state, not quite. I got 3 left. And it's magnificent. The people are magnificent. They're so different. And then the geography and everything. So I'm kind of, it's just nice to have a little bit of the refresher about how cool America is. And so I'm excited also for our next guest who's doing something similar to kind of remind us about how cool being American is. So one of the unique things about America is that we are a nation of doers. When obstacles get in the way, we don't stop. We figure out another way to make it all happen. And our guest today has taken on that American spirit and asked the question, is there anything I can't do? His new social media series is called Red, White, and Do, and you may have seen his face on the podcast before. I want to welcome back Ken Strang, Managing Director for AFP, to talk about his new series and how it got started. Ken, welcome back.
David, thanks for me. Yeah, I'm so excited to talk about this. Thanks for letting me do this today.
Oh, we're thrilled, man. It's just been so fun to follow. I do hope folks, after listening to you, will just decide to kind of follow what you're doing with Red, White, and Do. So talk to us about the idea, where the idea came from, and, how it's manifesting.
All great ideas seem to start at a water cooler. And that's where this one started. At Americans for Prosperity, we have been doing a One Small Step campaign. And I was thinking about, what could I do for one small step? I've worked on political campaigns and advocacy since I was young, and I love America and everything that comes with it. It's like, what can I do that's a little bit different? And this water cooler conversation really started about George Washington, that people see George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, the Wright brothers, and people have made such a big impact on America, sometimes as statues. And we forget that they are ordinary people who did extraordinary things. And what slipped out of my mouth, David, was I bet I could cross the Delaware. I didn't say frozen, and I didn't say with a musket, and I didn't say with the Continental Army, but like I could cross the Delaware. And then that light came on of like, what if I did all these American things that are such a part of our history, our traditions, our celebrations, and the fabric that makes up America. And so I got an iPhone and a pair of Meta glasses and set out to do exactly that.
That's so awesome. What fun. So, all right, what are some of the things on the list, or all the things on the list? Tell us about, what you've done thus far and maybe what's coming.
What I love about the list is it's constantly growing because somebody will find me and say, you should do this. But here's where the list is so far. So one is where we're starting is, can I join the American Revolution? Because I think that as we celebrate 250 years of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, that's a great place to start. We're talking about, again, fabric of America. I think about Lewis and Clark and being explorers and going out into the wilderness in the Missouri River. So can I paddle out on the Missouri River and see what it might have been like? And those are some of the historical parts. But then there's also the America part. I love rock and roll and country and the music that America has brought to us. And so I'm building a Telecaster guitar, which was what the electric guitar is certainly an American innovation. And the Telecaster is kind of the first super accessible guitar that a kid can pick up and start a band in his garage. And so I'm building one of those. I've written a country song, and I've had the opportunity to speak to a country music artist, Daryl Worley, about what goes into a great country song. And we're going to perform the country song. And I've done a watermelon eating contest. And we just try to find these pieces that are very American. Can I be a pioneer? Can I be a cowboy? And along the way, I thought it was going to be me doing insane, stupid stuff that might get fun clicks. And I have learned so much about myself and America and really the people who I come across that keep these traditions and celebrations and history alive. And that's been a really fun part of this as well.
Yeah, that's great. We were in Boston together a few months back. Maybe tell us about what you were doing in Boston.
Well, the American Revolution is really sparked in Boston. And I think about all of the normal human beings that are partially responsible for starting our American Revolution. And I think when we think of Boston, we're thinking about Sam Adams and John Hancock and Paul Revere. And they play such a huge instrumental part in sparking the American Revolution, but it's also farmers and merchants and laborers and folks who were fed up with the tyranny of higher taxes and government oppression, who wanted to have their own United States of America, or at least their own freedom. Maybe they didn't know about a United States of America at that time. And so it was, can I join the Tea Party? In my opinion, America's greatest protest. And can I throw tea into the harbor? And can I get on a bicycle and ride down the streets of modern Boston and yell that the regulars are coming or the British are coming, and kind of get a feel of what would it be like to warn citizens that the British are coming and you better get ready and you better get the Minutemen out. And then that episode culminates with, we go to Independence Hall, and this is where America is really born, the idea of America, and that the Declaration of Independence is signed. And it really starts in Boston, but it also doesn't end with the signing of the Declaration of Independence. That doesn't guarantee our freedom. That doesn't guarantee those inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And so it's like, well, George Washington is the person who I think takes a lot of credit. And again, a lot of normal, average, ordinary people make up the Continental Army who don't have shoes on their feet, who are ill-equipped, who are not professional soldiers. They are normal human beings who signed up for the cause of liberty. And my thought was, can I get on a boat and can I cross the Delaware? And so I got into a inflatable raft, because why not? And put the oar in the water and got out on the Delaware and got a sense of what it might be like to join George Washington and go across the Delaware. And now, again, no muskets, and I wasn't attacking Hessian forces. It wasn't on Christmas. It wasn't frozen, but you get the sense that this is where this took place, and this is what it might have looked like. And it's an amazing feeling that it took incredible courage. It took incredible bravery. If my history serves me correct, a couple folks, because there was a blizzard that night, perished just because of the elements, and it was dangerous to do, not only because there was a war effort, but because the conditions were so bad. And my head just kept coming back to, again, George Washington is the icon, the father of our country, but normal people were with him that did this with him together. He was not alone. And I think if liberty were on the line today, would I get in that boat with George Washington? And I like to think that I would. And that's what this series is really about. Of we have done this throughout generation and generation after of Americans, of stepping up and stepping in, whether it's times of great struggle like the American Revolution, or it's times when innovation was necessary. And Americans have always jumped in headfirst, explored, innovated, created. And that's the American story. And I think that's what we're finding out along the way.
The interesting thing is that there's probably no small number of the men in those boats with Washington crossing Delaware. Years later, were farming land in the new country. Like they sitting there on their porch telling their kids about when they crossed the Delaware that freezing night with George Washington. So you've had the chance to record with your favorite farmer, your dad.
Yes.
So why did you record with him? I know we've been friends for a long time, but I know your dad's your hero and a wonderful man. So tell me about why you ended up recording with him.
That was a lot of fun. And for full disclosure, America doesn't necessarily own farming. I think it goes back a little bit further than that, right?
Yeah.
But there's certainly an American identity with farming. And we see it in our culture with every beer and pickup truck commercial you have. They're the hands of a farmer and open land. And I always remember as a kid the Paul Harvey speech about a farmer. And I grew up doing a lot of that work of helping dad on the farm. And there weren't too many things that I hadn't done on a farm, except one thing. I had never been trusted to plant corn. And I feel like there was always a lot of pride in ownership on that, of you wanted straight rows, one, to brag to your friends, and two, so the combine could shell your corn more easily. And it was always kind of reserved for lack of a better term, like the patriarch of the family. And so in my entire life of growing up and living on the farm and being with dad, I was never trusted to do this one thing. And so he relented this day. And we don't have as much of the farm left as maybe what we did when back in the 70s, after we had some really difficult financial times during the Carter years. But we have the back 40, which is the original 40 of that the Strangs came to over 150 years ago. And so we're on that plot, which makes it a little bit special. And dad lets me get on the tractor and lower the planter and plant a couple of rows of corn. And it just is not something that I'd never done before. And I was talking to dad about that later. And I said, what if I mess up? What if I mess up your row? Because you put a lot of pride in straight rows. Like, well, I'll fix it. I'll fix your bend. And so, okay, dad, you got me. You can fix the bend. And we had talked about the process and all this sort of things. But later on, what I got out of him, and I don't know if he's going to tune in or not, but I'll out dad here. I said, dad, when was the first time you planted corn? And I could see him going back into the memory bank, and he's in his 70s now. And he had told me that the first time he had planted corn was when his dad had passed away. And it was still a very similar thing, that it was always reserved for a patriarch of the family. And that when his dad passed away, my dad and my uncles and my grandmother took over the family farm. He died young, and they had to figure it out, like many Americans before them. And you could kind of see him going through the annals of history in his mind that, I think the first time I planted corn was when I had to do it. Now, luckily, I had my dad there to give me a couple pieces of advice so I didn't mess up. But we talk about just generations, and we also talked about the innovation of farming. The original Strang group of folks that came, they were probably clearing stumps. They were certainly planting with animals, with horses that were drawn. And now we don't have any fancy equipment, but now there are GPSs in tractors and that track everything you do and the movement you do. And AI is a part of farming now. And it has become so different that from when we started this to where we are today, innovation has just taken hold, and it really helps make for better crops. It helps feed the world. And so that was a lot of our conversation too about what does it actually take to put food on somebody's plate? And he also, knows what we do for a living and talks about the barriers that he has of how do energy policies and the Strait of Hormuz and higher fertilizer process impact when you and I go to the grocery store and want to eat dinner, and that it's not just put food in the ground, you take it out and here it is. Their world conflicts impact that. Real American policy impacts that. Inflation impacts that. And it takes a lot to get food from that field to somebody's table.
It's great. So if someone goes online, they're like, wow, this kind of Strang's really great. I really want to hear more about Red, White, and Do. What does it look like? How many episodes do you have out there, and how many more do you think are to come?
Well, you are getting me in pre-production, which I think is a lot of fun because it's a chance to see it all. And what we're doing right now is, if you want to follow along, go to our Instagram page, which is Red, White, and Do, with underscores in between every single letter. Red _ White _ and Do _ and follow us along on Instagram. And then we're going to release videos on YouTube with all of these different exercises. But we wanted to get past the 4th of July and then settle into, there's a lot more America than just Independence Day, even though it is the greatest holiday. And we want to shoot off fireworks and we want to eat hot dogs and we want to celebrate the founding of this nation. But so much comes after that. And I feel like this series needed to come after that big party to show Americans all the other things that we are and what we do and what we stand for. But definitely follow us on Instagram at Red, White, and Do with all underscores in between.
So as you've been undertaking these, you said that you've learned, it's not just been doing crazy things. You've learned about people and had some real experience. So, has it changed how you think about the American people or reinforced something one way or another?
It certainly does. I think innovation is what typically comes with everything that we do. And it's how fast America has innovated and changed. And we just talked about that with farming. We talked about that with, I met an auctioneer. Again, auctioneering itself is not American, but the chant. 5 now 10, 10 now 15, 20, 25, 30. And I grew up at a lot of farm sales and I was enamored with the chant. Where does that come from? How do you learn that? How do you talk so darn fast? And my uncle was an auctioneer and he put me in touch with a friend of his who was also an auctioneer. And he started talking about that this is how they started trading tobacco and things and selling in the South. And it's to move the story along and to keep you interested, and they don't want any gaps. So you find it fascinating and you keep bidding. So he keeps talking. And he had talked about how his business now is not in front at an auction house, in front calling out the numbers and selling them and hitting the gavel. It's all online. And that it's maybe changing the chant, and that American piece of history of the chant potentially could go away in a few decades. But with it being on the internet, instead of having 50 or 100 people at his auction house, he has access to potentially thousands of people who are looking for very specific items that he can sell towards. We went to a 100-year-old grocery store, and it was something similar. We went to a small town over by Springfield, Illinois, kind of our neck of the woods. And he talked about how there aren't enough people in this town to really warrant a grocery store. But he started using the internet to sell sausages. And he sells sausages all across the United States, and people will make a special trip to come in, or he'll ship them frozen. And we constantly see these different iterations. I even think about Lewis and Clark. I think the story of Lewis and Clark is so fascinating. Another Illinois story, because I'm a homer here, but they launch around Wood River, Illinois, around Wood River, and they're going out into the wilderness, and they have a little bit of knowledge based on fur traders and different tribes that can help them along the way. But for the most part, they're on their own. And I think about, we're still doing that. We're still trying to strive to, whether it's get to Mars or explore the deepest parts of the ocean or explore a part of space that we've never seen before that we really don't know. And there are still people out there that in my mind are so similar to what Lewis and Clark were doing in the name of exploration. This is dangerous. I may not come back from this, but in the name of science and in the name of exploration and curiosity, I'm going to do it anyway. And I think that comes through a lot in these stories of kind of the fabric of America, which is really fascinating. But it really is a story of innovation. It
just strikes me that America, you said something that really is interesting to me, that, the pace of innovation in America's history has just been so rapid. And it's so true. And a part of that's where it has fallen in history and, the worldwide pace of innovation also. But America really picked up the mantle and has been the leader in it. And for, a few centuries now. And it just strikes me like the courage and kind of chutzpah that people had, to get in a wagon and drive across, treacherous areas to just go and have a better life, to have better farmland, to go mine or whatever. It's just amazing when you look at America's history. And then, taking that spirit and applying it to all the different industries. I just talked to, a former CEO in the energy industry, and he was talking about just the innovations around natural gas and other things. And it's just the revolution that's created. And it's just incredible, the pace of innovation. And, it's one of the lessons that I think we try to put forward on the show is, let's not squash that with overregulation or lose that spirit. I think, unfortunately, government and bureaucracy can stop that. And, it's that's like the secret sauce here. Like, there's just so much good. There's so much good that's been produced for society and for people by embracing that entrepreneurship and that spirit of innovation. And I'm so glad that you're kind of showcasing it. It's so much fun. Are there any other?
Well, you're 100% right, and it's often not the big guy doing it. I don't think anybody put their money on the Wright brothers creating flight.
You're like bicycle guy.
And I think that, yeah. And I think what's fascinating is, what worries me is that we have put so many regulatory burdens and red tape on innovation and exploration that we need to be mindful of who we've been for 250 years and where we're going to go for 250 years. And that a great idea can come out of a garage. And a great idea can come out of somebody's basement. And if we make it impossible for those dreamers who set out to do, can't make that happen, then we're going to hold ourselves back. And the innovation that we've seen in America will be held back. And if the government gets in the way and feels like, the only innovation that can happen is from the government, well, that has not been the history of our country. It has been done, again, by normal, average, ordinary American people who really, in a lot of ways, are looking for better mousetraps. How can I fiddle with this thing? How can I make this better? How can I continue to innovate? And how can I go explore? And I'm always concerned, my kids always want to make a couple extra bucks, and you always see, to open up a lemonade stand, like you probably need to have these, regulations and bank accounts and all this sort of stuff. And it's like, we should really be mindful of, if these regulatory burdens stop us from being the innovators that have really defined a nation.
I'm reminded, as we're on this, celebration of America's 250th anniversary, and we look at the Declaration of Independence, it's allowed me to reflect on like what makes us different, kind of go back to it.
Right.
And I kind of go back to, in the Declaration, that our rights come from our Creator, not from a king or from the government. And then I also think about how, this revolution was sparked largely around economic issues, because they're tied to our freedom. If we can determine how we can make a living or how we spend our money and we're not overtaxed. I mean, those are real issues that this revolution was fought over. And those are things that really set us apart from what Europe was at the time, still in some places, still has some remnants of, and other places in the world. That's why it was such a revolutionary concept. So I think it's in our DNA as a nation to be innovative, to take that responsibility on us and say, hey, no, I have this individual liberty to go out and try to improve my lot in life and make things better. That's why we have the American dream.
Yeah, I mean, I think the American dream is something that I don't know if they intended, but it's certainly enshrined in the Declaration of Independence. And you mentioned it. Our rights are inherent. They are not derived, as you mentioned, from a king or a government. And this revolutionary idea that the government exists to protect your rights, not to define them or take them away. And I don't know if they meant it at the time, but life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. They didn't say a guarantee of happiness. They said you can go out there and you can get after it. And I think that is so much of the American experience. And I think about not only the history that we've done, but also the innovation and also the celebration. Some of the best part of this series have been the celebrations that we've jumped into. I did a watermelon eating contest, and there's not a lot of, let's go back into the annals of history and find out, why do Americans do watermelon eating contests? Well, we do it, one, because we're a nation of abundance. And thankfully, we are incredibly blessed with our form of government, free enterprise that has led to that. But also because on a hot summer day in July, why wouldn't you put your hands behind your back and see how much watermelon you could eat in 90 seconds? Because Americans have a way of turning everything into a competition, a way of having fun. And what I have seen through this that I think may not be unique entirely to the United States, but it's also a great sense of community. We come together to celebrate. We come together to do things. We come together to eat watermelon. And every single city, municipality, little small town in America has some sort of celebration that they do to celebrate where they come from and their heritage. And it often comes from this community-driven thing that we want to be together. We want to root for each other. And that's something that I thought was a lot of fun with the watermelon eating contest. I met a family who, they do it together. You mentioned that your family is eating watermelon in a contest together.
Yeah, we had a time where they had 3 age groups and a from child won each age group. So I was very proud of them.
But they bring homemade signs and they cheer people on. Awesome. And there's a little bit of trash talk and there's a little bit of competition. I think it's just one of those great examples of, like, there doesn't always have to be this deeper meaning other than it's community and it's, faith, family, freedom, where we get together and we want to celebrate the goodness of our communities and who we are and what we can do. And I don't think anything really beats that beyond a watermelon eating contest.
It's awesome. Well, Ken, I'm actually super excited that post Independence Day, there's a lot of things. AFP is doing a lot of America's 250th celebrations across the country, but this can be something that everybody can plug into. As we're in the second half of this celebration year, that everybody can tune into and keep track of Red, White, and Dew. I'm very excited for it. I know I'll be doing it.
Well, thank you so much. Follow along. People have given me so many great tips, but it's just a great opportunity to reflect that America is special. We have special people and special history and special traditions and special communities. And I think it's just a great opportunity to take the things that make America, America, from George Washington to baseball, to watermelon eating contests, to farming, and talk about where we've been, the people who are doing it. Can I step in their boots for just a minute and give it a try and typically fail? But like most Americans, I get back up and I try it again.
Ken, you're used to failing. I'm sure.
Yes, I am. It's the best lesson. It's the best teacher.
All right. Well, and so it's first you go to Instagram at red_white_do. Is that correct?
And do.
And do.
Red, white, and do. That's right.
Nice. All right. Well, everybody go check it out. Kent's one of the all-time great entertainers and great Americans who has something to teach us while having fun. So, Kent, thanks so much for joining us. And I hope I can't wait to watch all the content.
Absolutely. We'll do one together, David.
Nice. We totally will. Cool. Well, folks, if you like this episode and would like to stay connected with the podcast, be sure to like and subscribe to our channels, as well as following us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And always remember, liberty and freedom are easily taken for granted. Don't take them for granted. Go out there and defend liberty and freedom. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to American Potential. You may listen to more stories from Americans working every day to expand freedom and opportunity in their communities by visiting AmericanPotential.com.